Last week, we discussed steps 1 and 2 of the Big Six research process, and we will briefly revisit those before moving on to steps 3 and 4 this week. Also, a few students had questions, so I'll quickly address those before moving on. So, first question, what if you can't find what you're looking for? The answer, then you'll need to brainstorm more search terms or revisit your research question. We will talk a little bit more about the search process this week. The next question, will our teachers give us the projects or will you? For the projects we will do during library time, I will give you the project, but I will be sharing the information with your teachers, and your teachers might assign different separate research process projects as well. So just the projects during library time will I be giving to you. Which is better in your opinion, this website or the other one is our next question. I think all of the databases in WorldBook are equally useful. It just depends on what information you're looking for and what your purpose is. Do we have to use these sites? For this project in library class, you will need to use WorldBook, the Gale databases, or PebbleGo Next Science if you have a science topic. You will only need 2 sources, and for the topics that we will use for the actual projects, they're all based on the Gale Elementary database. So when you did all that voting, I took those topics directly from that database to make sure you would have information. What are we doing next? First, we will go through all the steps in the Big Six research process, and then you will choose a research question and go through the process yourself. Are you able to zoom out? I said this because you are zoomed in. If I'm zoomed in during a video, it's for effect, so things are more readable. I do my regular work with a normal zoom, so I can, yes. The next question, has the Big Six research progress ever been helpful in situations? Yes, it is often helpful to have steps you can follow when you're encountering unfamiliar information. So this process is just that. It's steps that you can use, go back to help keep yourself focused. It's just like when you have, if you play an instrument and you have steps you follow to put your instrument together. If you do them in the correct sequence, you know you're going to get your instrument to put together and it's going to be quick. If you don't know what you're doing and you try to put an instrument together, it's not going to be right and it's going to take you a lot longer. So a research process is just kind of a framework and a way to keep yourself focused so you don't waste a lot of time. So those of you that don't love spending extra time on homework when you don't need to, a research process is perfect for you because it can help you going from step to step to step to step, and then you can streamline everything. What can you research? Really whatever you're interested in. For this project, you will have topics you already voted on. What I'm going to do is generate research questions for the most popular topics, and then you'll be able to choose from those research questions, okay? So we don't have a lot of time, and I want to make sure everybody can be successful. That's why I'm doing it that way. The final thing somebody brought up is, yes, I made a mistake with the activity last week, and there were 2 questions that said pick 2 answers, and you could only pick 1. I have changed the number of points that activity was worth to reflect that mistake. So when I send those results out to your teachers, that'll be reflected. Thank you for letting me know about that. I'm very sorry about that error. All right, so now we're going to move on to our next step. So last week we looked at the assignment that read as follows. With Veterans Day approaching, we are all going to create a visual with some text to describe the history of Veterans Day. This visual can be hand-drawn or be done digitally using Google Draw. Make sure to use at least 2 sources. I keyed into the fact that my task was to create a visual that explains the history of Veterans Day, and my research question was simply, what is the history of Veterans Day? The question mirrors the assignment and is focused enough for my research. I will revisit the question throughout my research process. I then brainstormed where to search and what terms to use as mentioned last week. So just as a reminder, step 2, I brainstormed using WorldBook Online and Gale Student, and then I was going to look for Veterans Day, Armistice Day, History, and Past were going to be my search terms. Now that I've reviewed steps 1 and 2, I can look at steps 3 and 4. These steps move back and forth quite a bit throughout the process. Step 3 is location and access. You are asking yourself, how can I find the needed information and where is the information in my sources? In this step, I will begin my search and keep track of how it is going. In my case, I first searched WorldBook Timeline and I did not get any results. So I went back to the super page and found that the student world book did have a short article on Veterans Day. Next, I went to the Gale database, elementary, and found there were a wide range of articles. I found one in reference that I saved, and I also found a magazine article that talked about the difference between Veterans Day and Memorial Day. Now on to step 4. As you will see, I can move between 3 and 4. Maybe you might even find an article and take notes on it and then start over. Each person will find the way that the process works best for them or for their project. Step 4 focuses on getting your information and answers the questions, how can I use my information and what do I actually need? This is where you take notes and cite your sources. For my project first, I looked at the 3 articles. I only needed 2 for this project, and I decided I did not need the magazine article about the difference between Veterans Day and Memorial Day. Next, I found the citation information for each article I was going to use, copied it, and pasted it into my Big 6 handout. One note, if you are not sure which articles you will use, copy and paste the citation information for all of them, and then delete whatever you decide not to use. Next, I started taking notes. The World Book article was short, and I only ended up with a couple of notes. It is okay if you use one source more than the other source. I made sure to label my citation source 1, and my notes that were from the source were also labeled. So I also made sure to label things as quotations or paraphrases. I could also use a summary if that applied. So when you look at my notes from this section, you'll see the source number, and then you'll see the citations too, up above. So then you can say, okay, source 1 is that World Book source, so then I just have to write source 1, and then I take my note. Okay? And then I tell you if it's a quotation, a paraphrase, or a summary. So what is the difference between a quotation, a paraphrase, and a summary? As you can see in the image, a quotation is a direct copy of the original, in which case it is really important to state where the information came from. For instance, in this case, you would be describing the tree the exact way it is described in the text. For a paraphrase, you are putting it in your own words, but you are still using information. You might see a sentence in the text that describes the yellow tree and the field around it, and your sentence has details about the yellow tree, but in your own words. For a summary, you would have even fewer of the details, but still be discussing the big concept. So if you had an entire paragraph that described the autumn season, yellow leaves on the tree, position of the tree, and the yellow leaves all around it, then you would just summarize the basic concept of the scene described in a sentence with your own words. If you look at my example notes, for instance, source 1, so that's the World Book source, says, for information, the Tomb of the Unknowns has a special service. That was a paraphrase. Then if you look at the 5th note down on the page, from source 2, which is the Gale article, it says, Veterans Day honors people who have served in the military, and has a cue for quotation. So that is a sentence taken directly from the article, and it will be really important that I know exactly where that came from and I look at that full citation. So all of this work in steps 3 and 4 will really help when I'm actually putting the information all together in step 5 and thinking about what I did in step 6. Please make sure to do the steps 3 and 4 comprehension activity in the library classroom and make sure to ask any questions you may have.